No. But yeah, Laura, thank you for taking time out. Obviously, we're here to talk about Jane Austen wrecked my life. It kind of feels that Jane Austen was heavily involved in every aspect of this film. I think you even wrote the script in the place where she spent her final years. What was it about her that kind of fascinated and inspired you enough to build a film around her?
So to be completely honest with you, I didn't start thinking about the film with Jane Austen. I started about another place, a place actually, Shakespeare and Company, where I worked in the bookshop, the Anglophone bookshop in Paris. And then I thought about a character, Agathe, a bookseller who wants to be a writer, who dreams of like having, a love story, etc., and who's blocked. And I thought, who could she blame for all of the things that she cannot do? And then I thought about Jane Austen. And because I read her books and I absolutely love her and she paved the way for romantic comedy. So you cannot not think of about Jane Austen when you think about a romantic comedy. But she also set up some quite high standards in terms of like romantic ideals that are still resonating today for many reasons, which is absolutely fascinating, and for many culture. Um, I've been traveling with this film and talking about Jane Austen with so many people from Spain to Greece to America, and not necessarily Anglophone people. And she's there for people. She's still there. It's incredible. So I hope I answer your question. But yes, once I decided that she will be in the center, but she will be everywhere, really, Jane Austen. Jane Austen herself, her life, as much as her books and the characters that she created. Um, Going to Chawton, where she spent the last years of her life, was extremely inspiring because they kept the house where she left as it is, really. So it's a very touching place. You can see her desk, you can see the bed that she was sharing with her sister. These kind of places that don't look like museum, but more like you feel like you are experiencing something when you admire a writer. So all these things put together, and many many bad drafts, and one after the other, and then I wrote the script.
And like you say, her work has been regularly adapted,
Yeah.
even 250 or so years since she was born. What do you think it is about those stories that she wrote that means that, we're still fascinated by them today?
Well, I think the humor is definitely something that is timeless. I think she was ahead of her time for many, many things. So this distance that she had makes her timeless. You know what I mean? I think that's what I try to put in the film. The fact that her main characters have had humor as women. They were not, romantic, pure, naive women or like evil women. They were ambivalent. They were capable of like, they were not perfect. They were imperfect characters. And I think also what she did, my feeling is that she's the first who understood that through the genre, the romantic comedy. I don't think she would have called it this way at her time, her writing, but through this entertaining genre, you could be very political. You could say a lot about women condition and how
Mm.
they would fight to survive, and the wedding at this time was a way to survive. They had no other choice. But her life herself was also very inspiring, I think. I read Emily Dickinson recently, like I reread her poetry, and these women, these writers who are capable of writing these things that are so beautiful and true, and they are able to share an experience with their writer without having experienced what they are talking about. Emily Dickinson, she stayed home. She rarely went out. Jane Austen didn't get married. She shared her bed with her sister until she died. It's a very touching and incredible um, idea. This creativity, this the way she could read people's soul, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I could go on, but maybe you have other questions.
Do you have a particular favorite adaptation? Because like I say, there's been so many, and there's been ones that have stayed period accurate, and then there's other ones that have tried to modernize it. Do you have any favorites?
I am very classic. I think Sense and Sensibility, the Ang Lee adaptation written with Emma Thompson, or I don't know if he wrote with her, but I think Emma Thompson for me is like the most incredible woman that you have in England. One of them, but I think Sense and Sensibility is this adaptation is captured so much. Um, what I felt when I read the book, which is always a very, edgy thing, adaptation, especially for books like this. You put images and you put actors instead of what we fantasize about. So it's always, a weird experience. But this one particularly is a real homage, more than an homage, actually.
And your film mixes a lot of sort of Austen elements with modern times. How did you go about sort of balancing, the past and sort of, respecting that work, but then also, bringing it into the modern day?
Well, I guess it was very intuitive through the writing, but one thing that was very important for me from the beginning was to not make another film, about a woman who would be saved by a man or saved by love. I love the rom-coms from the 90s. I love Richard Curtis. I love so many rom-coms, but I really wanted to have a women character who would carry another dream, who who would have another goal actually than the love. And it's because what I tried to do was more like a self-discovery journey than a traditional rom-com. And it's because she saves herself that she's able to fall in love. But I would say that the love story is I'm playing with it with this expectation and the love triangle, but it's almost secondary for me, because I think that's the most important thing for my character in this film is to face her grief, and face her desire to write before anything else.
Because writing is, it's such an intimate thing, so then, when you have sort of done all these drafts, how does it then feel sort of letting people read it and going, obviously you've worked, you said that you did many drafts on this film, but then, taking it to those first people and getting that feedback and then going about, getting the film made, what was that experience like?
Well, I have like everybody who writes, I have a very weird relationship with writing. I love it as much as I hate it. And people who say that it's pure pleasure are liars. Nobody should listen to them because it's a very weird process and very different for everyone. But I think it's Anne Patchett, the American writer who described it so well when she says that, you're so comfortable with your ideas in your mind because they're perfect, because they are in your mind. And you know that the minute you will translate it on paper, and on the first draft, you will kill them. It will be terrible. It will be awful because the first draft is awful. So this weird thing that we do where you actually have to face your own mediocrity with the first draft, no matter how genius you think you are, and then you rewrite, and then you rewrite, and then comes for me at least the pleasure of like having things slowly having a form and then playing with the words and the language and the images with the script. You write with images when you write a script, which is also very liberating somehow. So it's a long process, but I also what I loved the most, because I was a writer for a long time, it's my first feature as a director. Um, I experienced the pleasure of rehearsing with actors
Mm.
and proposing scenes and lines and dialogues, and encouraging them to also improvise and find with them and look and search with them the better lines. And this is like a dream, to not be alone with your bad lines, but to be able to have like good directions, good ideas, and then collaborative work somehow.
Mm. And what was it about Camille that made her, your perfect lovelorn heroine?
I discovered her in film, and I was very touched by something that I was actually looking for with this character, which is um, a form of melancholy, I guess. My dream was to make a melancholic comedy where you have a character who is on the edge all the time. She could cry, but she could also like open the wrong door and be naked in front of the wrong guy. So I was looking for someone who could carry this depth and melancholy, but who could also be a physical do physical comedy. And Camille, when I met her, she is like this in real life. She's very clumsy. She's very tall. She's so beautiful and she's not aware of it and she's not playing with it, which is so interesting about her, you know. She comes from theater. She loves literature. Her fathering is English. We could speak about books. We could speak about so many things. So it was quite obvious. But I think probably the melancholy is the first thing that I found with her that I thought, okay, and made me thought, okay, that's her for sure.
Am I right in thinking that, the bookstore in the film is the one that you worked at?
Yes,
So what was
Shakespeare.
that experience like, sort of going back, to the place where you used to work, suddenly with your new career?
Oh, that was a very, very touching moment. The people who run the bookshop are my closest friends. Sylvia Whitman is my friend, and David Delaney. So it's not like I haven't been back. I come back every week, but it's a very different story because we were shooting in the bookshop at night when the bookshop was closed. Because thank God they have so many visitors that it would have been impossible to ask them to close the bookshop. And I can tell you that the final scene about the poem that I heard in this bookshop 15 years ago, this poet that I met 15 years ago, who unfortunately died, Jack Hirschman, who is now played by my friend Frederick Wiseman in this bookshop at night. That was a very, very emotional moment for me. It's the last scene we shot also, it was really so yeah, I hope, I mean, many people around the world, it's like Jane Austen. So Shakespeare and Company is extremely famous. People own the bookshop, which is beautiful. They feel home in this bookshop. But I hope for those who don't know it, that they will, on their way in Paris, stop by Shakespeare and Company.
Definitely. And something that did intrigue me was the fact that the film, is bilingual. It plays out in a mixture of English and French. Why did you decide to take this approach? Because I guess there's a version of this film which is all French. There's a version where perhaps it's all English. Why did you decide to mix the two?
So I think it's probably first the first reason is a constraint, which is that if you finance a film in France, and you need the money from like French funds, you need to have a French language majority. So I couldn't do an entire English film. And then because it was this bookshop, because it was Jane Austen, because I wanted to send her to an English residency, it was obvious that it couldn't be another language than English. And then I realized that I would from these constraints came a lot of creativity because I didn't want to play and underline the difference between French people and English people, because this is not so interesting at the end, but I did want to use when I could the misunderstanding sometimes, the comedy that come from this, lack of vocabulary or the wrong words or the new people we become when we speak a language that we speak, but not like our like mother tongue. You know what I mean? All these things. And I also realized that it would be that's the beauty of like England is like so many people who are like book lovers. They speak French, actually. I met them, so I was very relieved that it was believable. And when I looked for these actors, uh, it was also wonderful to play with these two languages and ask them to shift from a language to another, to improvise in English, because I might have need some English language background or stuff like that. So I'm very happy. I wish I could do more films with even if people tell you that it's terrible for viewers because it's too complicated to have subtitles, no subtitles. I don't think so. And so far, I didn't have this feedback. Nobody really care, actually, which is interesting.
Mm. I mean, I have a 6-year-old, so everything has subtitles. Everything. Absolutely everything has subtitles. That's absolutely fine. I guess my final question, this film is, it's been released into UK cinemas. Why do you hope that people take a chance on this film? What are they going to get from this film that they might not get from some of the other films that are out there?
Well, I think it's a film about self-discovery and literature, and that tells about literature, but not in a generous way, not in a snobby way. So I hope it includes people who know Jane Austen and those who don't know her. Um, and my yeah, I think we need rom-coms more than ever. I think it's like an emergency. The world is crazy. We need optimism and consolation, and rom-coms are made for that. You can say a lot through rom-coms, but it's also light and entertaining, and I got so many hugs by people at the for Q&As who were telling me that this film were making them feel optimistic, and that was the most the best compliment I ever had, actually. So that I hope that's for the audience, you know.
Well, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with the film's release.
Thank you very much. Thank you.